I don't know who everybody is because everyone is the same sphere with hands, but everyone is adorable.
Michael is to your right,
So I'm
and
PJ.
Clem is all the way on the
Hi,
right
PJ.
over here.
Michael, Clem. So Michael's the tall one, and Clem's
Yeah.
the short one. All right.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Wookiee's the ugly one.
I'm the one with the telescopic eyes.
Ah, excellent. Awooga. So, how's everybody doing?
We've been having a lovely chat, I think, aside
Cool.
from talk of butts.
We covered so much ground, Brendan.
It
Yes.
sounds like it. I'm really behind, if you get my meaning. Well, we can get to the bottom of things, I guess. I don't mean to butt my way into the conversation.
Aw. I wish
Now
we were
I'm the
recording.
asshole. I thought we are.
For audio.
It says we're recording.
Well, I wanted to square a few things before we start rolling, just so everyone's aware.
Okay.
I got that on audio recording. But
Please be yourselves. There's no bad words. There's no filtering. We encourage everyone to be themselves.
I was going to
So-
be Clem. Is that not
Well, he
allowed?
did say he was envious of your staple gig, so that might work out.
Oh, okay.
But I know it's late in Londinius over there, but we normally record for an hour or so, but we can go shorter, longer, whatever you guys are.
Well,
Whatever's fun.
Why don't we
So-
front load with Clem, and then if she has to pass out, she can leave.
That works for me.
So it's Clem, Quinn, and Brendan, correct?
No, it's Michael.
Michael, I'm sorry. I am super bad with names. If anyone that's ever listened to a podcast, it's terrible. So I
What about
I
faces?
apologize.
Are you good at faces?
I'm awesome with faces, but that does not help. So hello everyone, welcome to VR Verdict Podcast, episode 110, our weekly podcast where we talk about everything VR. I am PJ,
Wookiee.
and we're joined today by the crew of OnBoardXR. I already forgot
Hi,
someone's
Clem.
name. Yeah, there you go.
Mike.
I
It's
told
a
you.
real professional operation here.
Yeah.
Joined by three
Barbados
spheres with hands.
So Clem, Michael, and Brendan. So why don't you guys tell us a little bit about what OnBoardXR is about, and then we'll start getting into things.
I'm going to push back on that because I would love to know. Y'all were amazing and came to OnBoardXR, and it is such a delicious train wreck that we do. We basically invite any artist in the world to push the boundaries of web VR and to make their own prototype, and that results in a lot of cool stuff. What do you think OnBoardXR is based off of what you saw?
So I think it's a unique collection of different stories told in many different formats in VR, or you also have a flat screen version, if I remember correct. And you just have like little skits or stories, and you have a certain number of audience members on the stage and cooperating and kind of playing along. Does that
Cool.
sound all right?
Wookie, what did you take away?
It was an eclectic romp.
Collecting romp. Oh, that goes on the box.
I didn't know what to expect, so going in there, it was fun. I don't remember who the lady pirate was, but I tried to get her while everyone was getting situated. Tried to get her to sing sea shanties. She wasn't having it, but
Aw.
it was a random collection of I don't know the type of reality it should be called, but
Ooh,
cinematic.
I like
light,
that.
some other reality. I'm trying to think of it. It's not.
So you
not
wouldn't put it in VR? Would you put it in XR? What is it straddling for you?
It's kind of like there were so many different facets because people in VR. I chose to do the desktop version just to see if it worked, and it was engaging in that one as well. I'd figured it would have been in VR, but then all the different the dancing and the singing and the I guess that one of the later shows was dancing, but the giant clown with the cloud hair.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that character had a name, but none of it seemed really real. But I'll come up with a term. It's some sort of alternate consciousness reality thing. So I'll give it a phrase.
Cool. Maybe we'll find it by the end of the evening. Basically, if you're tuning in wondering what this is, we are part of OnBoardXR, which you can find out about at theaterfestival.online, spelled the American way theater, or just use the hashtag OnBoardXR on pretty much all social media. And the basic goal is to invite anybody in the creative arts to bring their creative practice into VR for the first time. And we do this with a fork of Mozilla Hubs, which is a browser-based virtual reality platform that is open source. So people like Michael Moran, who is the floating sphere immediately next to me, can customize the code to be able to trigger cues, like traditional theater cues, like light changes, scene changes, or props spawning for different performers to bring their production to life. And then we have artists like Clemence de Beg at the very end there, who takes this to a whole nother level by she's integrated a full body perception neuron motion capture suit to do full body dancing in your web browser, which is insanity. So in this most recent OnBoardXR, we've done 4 of them so far. This 4th one was at Mozilla Festival, and we premiered 6 world premieres of different types of works. We started with Clem's Unwanted Waters latest chapter of that piece, which has been growing and expanding. This had 2 dancers in 2 different cities dancing together in full body motion capture. We then moved to a work by students that they basically spun up in, I think, 2 weeks. And it was kind of a choose your own adventure, fight to the death, Kraken adventure, where you had the audience had to choose which characters they became. And like a D&D gameplay, each of the characters had different roles or abilities that would be helpful to taking on the Kraken. We then had Ari Tar display this incredibly weird and fantastic animation piece where one of the avatar's bodies came open and his organs performed a jazz number, which was very exciting. Then we had Mandy Cornelis, who did this incredible one-woman show where she was the world's worst realtor, showing you a property that nobody wants that was sinking into the ocean. We had Nellie Lewis, who is a mime, doing the mime clown nightmare dance piece that Wookiee was describing with this cloud hair. And she really wanted to showcase the difference between, on the web camera, she with her traditional mime work was crying, but as an avatar, she was laughing. And she wanted those 2 different emotions expressed in the 2 different realities. And then we closed up with a new musical number from my larger work, Non-Player Character, a brand new musical number called Enough, kind of at the lowest point of my character's journey, and I wanted to put the audience inside of a lantern and have shadow puppets come to life to tell the story. So that is the most recent OnBoardXR at Mozilla Festival. And Clem, maybe talk about how you opened us up with Unwanted Waters and all the craziness you've brought to life with full body dance in web browsers.
Yeah, so as you very nicely introduced it earlier, so this piece of work is called Unwanted Waters, and for the first time I'm bringing 2 characters to life with 2 dancers in different locations. So one is Christian Morabito, based in New York, and myself based in London, and we're dancing in real time together in our virtual space, in full mocap in WebXR, which is pretty exciting. this chapter is so kind of expanding on this this piece called Unwanted Waters. We presented first chapter in November for the previous edition of OnBoardXR, where it was just me. And I was actually for that version animating through my mocap suit several characters. So I was kind of duplicating myself and pretending I had the budget for a full cast, doing synchronized dancing. And I just added a slight delay to make it look a little bit, you know, not completely in sync, to really pretend it was different people. It was just literally me. And then so this time around, second chapter, bringing a second character and second dancer in the room. And I really wanted to explore this idea of kind of entering a space that's not necessarily yours, and exploring this idea of community and this rite of passage when you join a community, and having to prove your worth to be accepted within the community. So the piece starts with me crossing a portal. So you can see me in my living room on the actual camera, crossing the portal and becoming a digital figure. And I become a Rusalka, which is a form of siren. And then Christia then appears through the portal in her own living room, and then crossing and becoming another character. And when she enters, she is kind of bare. She's naked, and then she will have to go through kind of a series of trials where she has to prove herself, and then she gets different attributes to resemble myself. And then we invite the audience in to then follow a similar pattern for them to be accepted within our community. So that's pretty much what the piece is about. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, like Wookiee was saying earlier, it was really neat to see you guys in the real world, and then you kind of like poke your head out and turn digital, and then you just kind of popped out fully. It was really neat.
Thanks. It was for us. It was actually there's like the storyline of it that for me was quite important to have this moment of passage. I also found this is really. It's a bit of a trick to make it very clear that this is happening live. And then once people see us in our living room, then it really ticks that, oh, actually, this is not pre-recorded. It's not an animation. There's actual people in the background as well. So
that was really neat, because it really did sort of like make me stop. And because I didn't know what was going on, I knew before we started recording, was like, I kind of poked my head through the rock, and I was like, oh, there's somebody in here. It freaked me out, because then like the rock turned into the door, and I'm like, what? And what? And there's a living room here now, and then there's people walking in here. And it really made me stop and think, like, wait a minute. This is, I didn't really realize. I mean, I figured there was going to be, actors doing it, but it added a real slice of dimension to like see you guys actually performing in front of it. Because otherwise it could have just been anybody in a mocap suit somewhere else or something, or a pre-recorded animation. It was really neat.
Yeah. Thanks.
So do the two of you spend time like video dancing together and like getting the routine down, or how does that work out?
So interestingly, I've been working in VR for much longer, but for Christia, it was the first time. So in our process, I also had to think a little bit about how to get her VR legs and her VR dancing legs, and how you build your spatial awareness in your physical space in VR while you're moving around, and in the virtual space as well. So I kind of build those different rehearsals to get her comfortable in that environment, understanding how to fake move in VR. So we have a few moments. Obviously, the virtual world is much, much bigger than our living room. So how do you walk on the spot to pretend you're, moving around? Obviously, I have no legs right now, but you can imagine, you can have to like pretend you're walking while you're actually just pressing the joystick. And at the same time, being able to, do some pirouettes and things like this in your living room, not knocking over furniture. So I have a few tricks, including really pushing the sensitivity on the Guardian, on both on a Quest 2 So we constantly see the limits of the space instead of only seeing it when you get too close to it, which helps building this mental model of where you are in your physical space while being in the virtual space. And at the same time, I'm also drawing some kind of points or kind of arrows on the Guardian, so I know where my front is. So I know how to reposition myself in my physical space as well. So we've spent a lot of time training like this, and then we've choreographed pretty much everything in VR.
That's neat.
Mainly because it was important for us to understand which movement would read, and working with mocap is quite specific. There are some movements that are very, very clear, and others that you'll probably do naturally in real life that is too subtle for mocap. So choreographing it with the medium to start with was really important. And then we had a little bit of back and forth to, more kind of getting in our body and rehearsing. We switched back to some Zoom rehearsals to just, count the music and then talk to each other and all of that. And then jumping back in headsets to see what that looks like and to see if we can be together. So that's pretty much the process we followed. And the other thing I wanted to mention as well in that process is we had done a lot of telematic performances together. I've worked with Christia for a while, and one of the main challenges has been latency. Mainly because I'm playing the music from my machine, and then obviously the person who's remote is going to experience that latency. So when it comes to dancing, it's a bit of a nightmare, and then being together on the music, on a choreographed piece is awful. But this time around, I was playing the music from my computer, and we're both in headset, which meant that we were roughly receiving the music with the same latency. Nice. So then we could be together at the same time, and that has been a game changer for us, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to ask with the latency, like how in the world, because I know we deal with it just in here sometimes. It's just, I can't imagine trying to dance and synchronize with that. So I'm glad it's working out for you.
And the mocap data is actually fairly light. So there's very, very little latency on the mocap data. And if you look very closely, when we've got our portals with the video appearing, most of the time, the mocap is going to be ahead of the video.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is quite interesting.
It is interesting.
I'm assuming, do you have any, you probably have some bloopers of like your in-game avatars just kind of like doing weird stuff when you're trying to figure stuff out.
Absolutely. And then, we had a lot of bloopers during the run of shows. Which day did you, I'm going to tell a few stories. It's quite interesting. Which days did you join?
We were on the last one on Friday.
Okay, so Friday was actually okay.
I didn't notice anything other phones or anything. So.
On Tuesday, in the middle of the performance, I lost the tracking of my right arm in the middle of it. So luckily enough, I think I lost it in a nice border bra. So it's like nice arm instead of having something really weird and twisted. But I usually do a lot with this arm during the choreography, so I had to on the fly switch to doing a little bit more with the left arm or something. So that was quite interesting. And on the Wednesday, just before we were going through, so we were underwater preparing ourselves to go live, because what we do is for people who haven't seen it, the scene is kind of an infinite lake with then a central part where there are rocks and a tree. To make sure everything works, we go first underwater where no one can see us. So I can turn the mocap on and I can see that both cameras are activated and that we're ready for top of show. And at this stage, I'm also on Discord with Christia to check that everything is okay and be able to switch to audio if we have to talk to each other. And I can see that her upper body wasn't working. So she quickly recalibrated, but she couldn't get her left arm to work. And we were saying to Michael, should we just move to the next act and then we'll go at the end or something like this? And Michael was like, can we not do that? It's like, okay. So we ended up going live where I forced myself to not move my left arm to mirror Christian, and we did the entire scene with just like one arm, which is hilarious. So that's part of all the technical
I
bloopers
hope
we
you're
had.
happy, Michael.
No, it was definitely really, really impressive to see them debugging frequently on the spot and doing it with poise backstage, in a way that really, from the audience, it was just kind of like, what's the holdup? Instead of seeing and experiencing kind of the bugs in real time. So, yeah.
I don't mean to get ahead of the game, but when stuff like that happens, I think you guys have a real good crew that seems like very good at ad-libbing and just popping in and distracting the people in there and keeping the ball rolling while you're working that stuff out. You think you guys are pretty quick with that stuff, so it's really neat to see.
I think this is where we have the advantage in some ways of, I think this is the real secret sauce to not just OnBoardXR, but I hope to this kind of emerging industry in general, is that there's this craft of stage performers or live performers that for a long time we've kind of talked about like artists being a dime a dozen or whatever, and kind of like, whatever. Like, but in these new mediums, that ability to balance and juggle the technical with the creative and be able to get through it no matter what, the kind of us versus the project mentality. In so many ways, it's been very interesting talking to more traditional game devs or even people who've done pre-recorded work, and they're always talking about like, well, we'll just ship it and then we'll debug, we'll keep patching updates. And I'm like, dude, that's a show. Like, this is a live audience. There's no update later. We're not gonna call them in a month and be like, oh no, now it's ready. And I love the idea of seeing where the work is today, which in many ways is the beauty of live performance. We don't go to see Hamlet, we go to see that Hamlet on that night. And that production of it with that team. And so I think that in a lot of ways, the iterative nature of this work is that every time you go see Unwanted Waters, every time I've seen it, it's different. I'm literally watching the artist evolve in real time with not just the medium and her own craft, but also the pieces changing and evolving based off those learnings. And it gives it the repeat watch value, but it also just makes it like we're all part of the journey. The audience that night is experiencing a once in a lifetime. The show will never be like this ever again. Yeah. And that makes it really exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then just to maybe add on top of that, a lot of the work we do. So I haven't explained this actually. So I'm the artistic director of Unwired Dawn Theatre, spelled the British way this time.
Fight.
Hey, yeah. So Unwired is UNWIRED if you're looking for us. And at the core of what we do, we have a lot of audience participation, which is fairly rare for any dance work. So we have this kind of triptych of dance technology and audience participation. And then doing work in VR, this is such a really fun playground to have the audience with us and then explore that kind of what type of interaction we can imagine with this medium. Because if we were doing this in real life, yes, we can learn from immersive theatre approaches, but it's very difficult for audience members to interact with a dancer in that context. Everyone is going to be very respectful and staying at a distance, and creating that type of work in virtual environment, that kind of boundary breaks way more, and it gets really interesting. And I'm really excited about that and how it gets a bit mad and we have to improvise with it, and it's really fun.
Yeah, it was you guys with the improvisation. Like I've been to a few of the live in VR things, and everyone participates. So I always wonder, like, how frustrating it, like, how different is it with like an audience that maybe they don't know they're supposed to like interact or like speak or anything. Like, how do you get them to that point and then make them comfortable to where they start like actually interacting and talking and playing along with you guys? Because I've seen a lot of them where like no one talks at all, whether they know they're not, they think they're not supposed to or not. But just how do you guys deal with that? Or
I mean, I think every creator, what's fun about something like Onboard is that you're not just coming to one show with one artist or one definitive voice. So the culture and the energy and the style changes throughout the course of the show because we're dropping into the different artist shows. And if you don't like it, like it's not your vibe, it's a lot of participation and you just kind of wanted to sit this one out, you wait 10 minutes and we'll be on to another act that maybe is asking a little bit less of you. And so it's really cool to see how the different artists handle the challenge. I always come from the talk radio perspective of it doesn't go wrong, it just goes fun. And so whatever the audience wants to do with that show in that moment, that is the show. And obviously that gets into a place if someone's being really disruptive and taking it away from everybody else. But I think as long as the collective group finds their energy, then I think that we find that balance and we get to perform that show for that community and that energy. I also don't want to misrepresent that this is just like an improv fest and it's just a shit show. Because like what we really rely on is the reason we have that freedom is because we have leadership from people like Michael Moran, who has organized within an inch of its life this show and the cues. We know where we're going. We're in communication and dialogue backstage on Discord the whole time. And I think knowing that that safety net is there, that the shows are stable for the most part, that everybody's is taken care of, supporting each other. Like there have been times that like, in the very first show Clem did, she couldn't get her video camera to stick. And so I would grab her video camera and put it in the right place. And it's knowing that we have each other's backs and that the show is stable and thought out and organized. And that we've got Michael sitting there really overseeing everything at a technical level live while we run through the show means then when things go wrong, we can improvise and we can roll with it because we're not been completely stressed out or left on to our own devices trying to fix it in real time.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Just doing things live is crazy. Like when, especially with new technology and everything, you guys are kind of pioneers and, pushing the boundaries of things. So I'm sure you guys see like new things every week, new issues or it's pretty awesome.
And other, regular games always have like, at least one bugged quest where like, the scripted events don't fire. I'm looking at you, Bethesda, and your million of those. But if only all games had a Michael behind the scenes, like making the steps happen. Like
that should go on Michael's business card. If only all games had Michael.
Yeah.
Had one of me.
Do you want to talk a little bit about
I need to start working at Bethesda.
Role, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came to the festival as a creator, just like Clem and Brendan. But then I had a very hackish technical background that I wanted to go more in depth with. So for the third and fourth versions of the festival, I really jumped into more of a stage manager, technical director role for those. So like Brendan said, we have this custom queuing system that we were, of course, all coming from a theater background, was modeled off software that we had used in very traditional theater settings for creating lighting or sound effects. And so when I came in, there was a version of that was really a great start that I could latch onto with my very hackish technical background. And build out for the third version with a bunch of features that I just wanted to see happen. Like I expanded to be able to move audiences through space. So when y'all were in the lantern being tracked along and you were actually shrinking as you were moving through space back up to the tree, that was something that I wanted to be able to mess with people's avatars. I'm always interested to see what the Hubs team specifically thinks of it, because I don't think it's in their ethos to, manipulate people's avatars without their permission. But their platform that they've set up has allowed these kind of integrations where you can really do whatever you want. And so I was able to add in some of those things. Yeah, and so I've been really lucky to be able to be in those early meetings with each creator as we're starting new seasons and have daydreaming sessions about what would you like to do with the audience, with your performance. Most of our people are coming coming from all different backgrounds, trying out what I call a first steps performance in VR. And so for me, it's really exciting when they're coming to it with no preconceptions about what is possible, and to be able to say, let's see what crazy thing we can accomplish. And
Do you
so
find that
yeah.
Is it hard to explain to a lot of them until they put a headset on, or do some of them kind of understand before that, or is that kind of like the key moment? Just curious.
Well, what we've identified, and something that we still haven't solved, is a lot of people can look through the documentation that we have, and I think Clem, I think a lot of people get intimidated seeing the work that you do, and some people really want to use that but don't understand the technical lift behind that. And so with the tools that I've been making along with some other members of the development team, there is still a gap between the documentation that we have to get people to understand what is possible with this new tool that we're making. So Brendan and I did a big push this time to put together an example of what each queue looks like in the space. But Brendan, I still don't think it has gone far enough yet to, I can show what spawning in and animating a avocado from point A to B is, but I think really once people get into the process of tweaking the queues, something that I have a lot of experience with, that's when they understand, okay, but what happens when I stretch this avocado to 1,000 and make it into a pancake, and then snap it back super fast, and then twist it around 5,000 times? That kind of customization is something that I want to give people more access to earlier in the process.
I think jumping on that, if anybody's listening, something you should know is you are invited to the next onboard. Basically, it is an open submission process for artists that want to try to play with this work. And what I find to be the most successful projects are not when you've seen other onboard work or other artists and said, oh, I want to do what they did. It's when you start having the conversation of, this is my creative practice. This is how I like to work. How would I do that with these tools? And then we often are getting asked questions or being presented with ideas that we'd never even considered before. And that, to me, is where the real innovation takes place, is that, having a mime for the first time in this Go, or having an artist want to do this kind of this house falling into the ocean. Clem we first started working together because she was using haptic signals to be able to get the audience to tell her which limb to move. And it was trying to authentically couch that process in VR that made it a piece that no one else in the world could have done. It was so aligned with what she was doing with Unwired Dance Theater. And similarly, Michael coming, his journey began because he came with this hacker mentality of trying to really get under the hood and manipulate some things for his own personal performance. And so in a lot of ways, I feel like when people show up and they kind of say, oh, I just want to do that, it's far less enjoyable and satisfying. And also usually that artist doesn't really take ownership of it because they're just waiting for someone else to then give them the tool or make the solve or fix the thing, versus them going like, okay, so I got in the room and I was able to do this, and there's something really interesting about using the prop that way. Could that prop maybe be my hand? How would we do that? Can I turn the prop into my hand? And suddenly now we're having a conversation about avatar development, or, skinning something in a way that none of us had ever considered before, which to me gets really exciting.
Yeah, it's neat. You have the whole creative process working and building off each other, and the new ideas that new people bring is always fun. Been a fun thing for anything I've been part of. So
It's cool that you guys have a sandbox that allows you to do all that.
Yeah.
On the fly. That's pretty cool. Clapping cheeks.
It's neat that you two are here, because you, like Wookiee was saying, like the opening dance number, and then I forget the character's name, but when you were the rock guy and the lantern, like those are my two favorite performances. So it's really neat to see those and have you guys here to talk about them. So
Can you talk about that? What was because it's fun to hear what people respond to, and it's art, so there's no wrong answers. Like, what is it that gravitated each of you towards the pieces that stood out to you from the design perspective, from the audience engagement perspective, from the actual performance?
yeah, like with yours, where you're the rock singing and then you were in the lantern, you're trying to nudge someone and you like threw the lantern, you're like, someone pick it up. You didn't say that, but you're kind of coaching, making it visible, like someone should pick it up. So I picked it up and they're like, oh, now we're going to, let's go up the stairs and follow. And you just make one of the audience part of the play and you're helping them participate, which is always neat. But in VR, my favorite thing has always been scale. So like when when we were all of a sudden in the lantern and things were happening and getting bigger and smaller, like that was awesome. Plus your performance was really great, by the way. You have a good voice.
Well, thanks.
It was just that you're trying to it was very leading us up the stairway and then all of a sudden we're in the lantern and you're telling the story and singing the song. It was really neat. And then for the dancing, like I said, Avi, just seeing it, you can just sit there and gasp in awe, just seeing it happen and all that. But there's just the design and your movements and stuff was really neat.
Thanks.
From my point of view, but
You both are probably very, very much more versed probably in the VR space and talking to other VR creatives than we get the opportunity to. Can you talk about just in the current kind of landscape, what is it about the live factor and about going to see live performance that you felt was different or stood out, and that could be less compelling or more compelling?
I'll go first, Wookiee.
Well, sure. There's a lot to that question for me because, I think,
Good, we're here all night.
yeah.
Well,
Growing up where I grew up, in PJ too, but I'm a couple years younger than PJ, so he graduated from high school and I went to a different one, tiny high school, and I was actually in the theater class. I was making the sets and got 4 roles in this crazy play and all that stuff. But I think a lot of people just didn't care, and I think a lot of that's lost on, I don't know, the last 20 years. A lot of people like to go to live theater, but there's just a lot of people that's not they would never cross their mind. So
Yeah.
a lot of it's missing. It ties into what you said earlier, how the performance is just that night's performance. You're never, you might be the best one ever, it might be the worst one ever, you don't know, but it's that's never going to happen again. And it's really a shame that in today's, I guess, social media driven world, it's everything's got to matter right now, and you just lose that real this moment is mine kind of a feeling. And I don't know if I'm explaining that well. It's if I can't snap it and put it on an Instagram or something like that, it doesn't matter. This, the moment that matters to you, and if you can make a connection with the players, I like the dancing, because when I started to pick up, I was all over the place looking at everything you guys had set up. So I'm sure I missed some of the cues and things. But when I started to notice that second dancer, and I don't remember her name, sorry, but when she started to get flowers on there, I started to try to intercept the story that you were trying to tell. And then that stuff is really neat to me when people try to use dance or almost tribal mechanisms to communicate stuff. My brain just zeroes in on that. And I think it's more engaging to your prominent question. It's more engaging to me that way, because it's nowadays, when you're saying live performance in VR versus just regular video games, I'm kind of sick of the mini map driven, here's some checkpoints, shoot stuff, go to the next checkpoint, push a button, shoot stuff. And it's okay. And I think that makes people dumber, but an actual communication or using visual cues, having no HUD on a video game and having to use visuals to tell the narrative, to convey the emotion, all that stuff. I think it's just so neat. And then plus it's it's almost fragile in a way. Like you said, this performance might never happen this way again. you drop an arm instead of break a leg kind of a thing. It may never happen again. And like, I think today's world is, I think we're all trying to we're being engineered to forget how fragile all that stuff is. Each moment can matter just because it happened, not because everybody else has to know about it. So it's kind of meandering, but I think that's my draw, is because it's ephemeral, I guess is the word. And it's just more meaningful to me that way. So
I love that. Do you think did you feel when you were inside of it that, we had a handful of embodied participants, and then we had many more ghost participants. When you're in a multi-user experience, do you feel that sense of connection and camaraderie for the experience, or do you prefer the isolation of, would you have wanted more of a one-on-one?
I guess I'd have to sample more and try to see if I had a one-on-one versus that. I think it went a little fast for me, like something like that. And not that I want poor Clem and her cohort to dance for like an hour, but like,
well, they got a 45-minute version coming. You can get tickets for that.
That's awesome.
But like, my brain likes to interpret that, because sometimes I will go, I don't know if it's ADHD, but I'll go and like watch that, and then it'll give me ideas of like a million other things based on how somebody's trying to, my pill hand just went crazy, how somebody's trying to tell me the story. And then my brain's like, oh my God. And I'll think of, I don't know, any random other thing while I'm watching the performance. And that's what makes me excited. So like, in a way, it was a shame that it was kind of a preview of sorts of a whole bunch of different stuff. And I like that. I like the crowd aspect and seeing other people interact and seeing how somebody, like if you throw the lantern to PJ, what does he do versus what I would have done, and all that stuff is fun. It's just separate. But my brain likes the slow thing. Like, I could sit there and watch some stuff like that for hours on end and just try to, again, not to make Clem dance that long, but if you had like a long 45-minute version, I might rewatch that like 6 times from different angles.
We're working on it.
Yeah, but like, you don't want to sit there for 8 hours to dance for one person. I don't know what my ticket price would be, but I'd be sitting there like, and it's weird. Just sometimes I'm not that to look at me, or like to PJ know me, like I don't know anything about dance, but I've seen a few dance things that are just like super touching. So it's kind of like, I don't know where that comes from. Again, like if it's like tribal communications that, maybe I've read about in the past. It's just, I don't know if that answers your question. I would like both, but it's like, it's just a different experience. If it's, 30 people in a room versus 5 versus just 1, I would do all 3.
Lovely. We'll hold you to it. What about you, PJ?
Kind of going off the second question first. So like I've done the meta movie experience. I did the
Jason Moore.
Yep. He's been on the podcast. We talk a lot. I've done the Under Presents a couple times. And they have like, you can participate, like it's all participation, no talking. Where the meta movie was
snap. You do your snaps.
Yep. So I've kind of done them all where like you're participating and either talking or not. For me, like to answer that question is it always depends on the rest of the group that's part of it, because you always get those people that are just kind of like not really into it, but they're trying to be, kind of, if that makes sense. So if everyone's into it, that's awesome. Like I would love to participate and be part of that group. If not, then I'd rather have it the other way and just kind of be a one-on-one thing. My biggest thing outside of like the meta movie, the other few things that I've done, including you guys, I think it just needs to be communicated a little bit more. Like we want you to participate a little, in this and that. Maybe just let everyone know, because at first you're kind of like, am I supposed to say anything or not? And then I feel bad because like when you guys were first like trying to like push the ball our way, it's like, oh, they want us to play, okay, like but that's just my opinion. Like I think it's fun no matter what. But
to add on to that too, when we had the realtor trying to sell that house that was thinking of the ocean, I was just sitting there. I got stuck in the second floor, and someone had to help me like push this button, and it'll go into God mode or ghost mode or whatever. It wouldn't work the first time, and then it suddenly did, and I was able to get out. But then after it was like halfway through, or like it was almost done, I was like, I really wish I'd had the presence of mind while that was going on to start asking a home buyer type of questions. As soon as it started to wrap up, I'm sitting there like, what kind of schools are nearby? You know, things like that. I'm like, why didn't I ask when that happened? Because that might have been funny for me and everybody else. I was like, shit. Like I just wasn't quick enough.
I think it takes a couple of times of being part of it to really get into that mindset, because like I said, at first you're just kind of taking it all in. You don't know what to expect. And you guys are doing awesome. And I don't know who was playing the pirate that was kind of leading everything, but he was great. Just like, you know, throwing jokes out there and all that. So I think it takes a couple of times to like, okay, yeah, I should ask those kind of questions, or, you know, give that feedback. But
the automatic response is like you put on a VR headset or you pick up an Xbox controller or something like that, and you're being fed information. It's like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to interact. Like, you know, you had to break out of that little habit.
Yeah.
But I was sitting there like, I'm sure I could have pitched in a little more.
Well, it's whatever the audience wants to do. I mean, we have an entire subset of the audience that is very passive, that wants not to be called on at all or acknowledged at all. And I think that comes with threading that needle of a more older traditional theater crowd wants to sit in the dark and watch the show and shush anybody whispering. And then there's a much more hyper engaged interactive audience that wants to play and become a part of the story. And it's trying to build stories that serve both audiences and give invitation to both types of players.
Yeah, that's really neat how you can include everyone and give them the space to do that.
Yeah, like the tools that you have at your guys' disposal. I don't know if you can, you know, come up with like, you know, participant cues to kind of maybe pull those dark seaters out of themselves, because I'm sure they're the ones that might even have more fun than the rest of the people. They're just like, no, leave me alone. Let me sit in the corner. But that's kind of interesting if you could think of a way, because the only difference I felt was like, at first I didn't quite notice that the second dancer was getting the same leaves and flowers outfit kind of thing. But it was like when I noticed that, I was like, oh snap, because I was just, there was too much in my frame of view, and it was the only difference you could do there is I don't know if you do something like some sort of Disney princess sparkle twirl or something to draw your eye there, because like there's no camera like cut in, like zoom in, hey stupid audience person, this is what you're supposed to be looking at right here, and then zoom out. It's like I'm sitting there looking at like everything, like I'm like, wait a minute, that lady's got a flower skirt now, and they're like, oh, the flower just popped up and stuff like that, like. No. Well, and then I was catching on.
Can I ask about that? Because I think that in a lot of ways, the language of cinema, right, is to do the work for the audience of the cut, to kind of tell them where to look. In some ways, it seems counterintuitive, but does the FOMO of you not necessarily always knowing where to look and having to be engaged and curious, does that actually make you lean into the performance in a way that you wouldn't if it was more spoon-fed?
And that's the good thing. Like I said earlier, you know, the mini map hitting you with checkpoints. It's like you should be aware of your surroundings. So you're probably actually right. Like you don't really need those cinema close cuts. If you don't notice the first part, you should buck up, and when you start to notice, that should be your cue to pay more attention. So you're probably right there.
Where did you find yourself watching from? Did you like to move around and get different vantage points, or did you find a spot and kind of hang? Were you more of a close-up person or get a full stage picture?
I probably got in the dancer's way. I'm sorry if I did. Because I was just like hello. And then I was like, oh, they're dancing here. I'm going to get kicked in the head. Because I don't know. We say this a lot in the podcast, but I would just, you know, playing like that old Witcher 3 game from 2015. I think I walked on foot around that entire map. I'm like, this is interesting. I'm just going to sit here and watch this. And then for a second, I didn't realize, you know, I almost forgot that those were real people doing a dance, and like maybe other people might not want to see whatever my avatar is like in their legs, like watching all this stuff. So I'm definitely, I guess, more of a mobile viewer.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the same way. I was moving around and trying to look from different angles, but then I was became hyper. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm probably getting in their way, or someone else watching probably doesn't need to see me in front of the dancer. So I was trying to like look around and find the best vantage point to to see what I wanted to see, but to stay out of the way too. So that's kind of tricky. But that's just the reason to go again. I mean,
perfect. So yeah, we should put you on the sales team. This is great.
There you go.
Clem, I don't think I've ever asked you actually, what is it like? And I don't know your background. I've seen you on social media perform in many non-traditional spaces, but what is it like to choreograph with a sense of 360 versus a proscenium?
So my background is a bit of a mix of proscenium work and kind of concerts type of dance, but also I've been doing a lot of installation work and immersive work, including some kind of street performances as well, and improv. So I feel I'm not bound to the stage, and I'm very comfortable choreographing for site-specific and non-traditional spaces. There's something about VR that, or any virtual environment in general, that still requires to think a little bit about where is the audience going to be at this point. Am I okay with someone being in my leg, or and am I going to acknowledge this person, or am I going to ignore this person? So I think for this piece, we ended up being a little bit more frontal, because we had this moment of crossing the portal, so it was quite important for people to kind of see us there. But the previous chapter was way more around. So the scene was different in the previous chapter. It was a small lake within a mountain, and the audience was spawned all the way around. So they had to cross the mountain to enter the lake. And I was live, but with also some pre-recording. So they could walk around and have a look at other virtual dancers around before the performance actually started.
Nice.
And it was a 10-minute long piece as well. So it's a bit more time to build up. And then I invite the audience to follow me around. So I kind of embrace the fact that we can be completely around. So to try to answer your question, Brendan, there is a little bit of this consideration of where would be the ideal viewpoint, but at the same time trying to choreograph something that will be interesting from other points of view. Mm-hmm. And then considering also, would this work if I'm not placed here? We had this situation, I think, previous edition of On Board, so first chapter of Unwanted Waters, where I'm trying to get you to picture the scene if you haven't seen it. So imagine there's a lake, and there's like, you've got the mountains around, but there's like a small island in the middle, a little bit like here, exactly like here. So imagine this is the water, and then this is the island in the middle, and then I'm a tree. Okay.
I'll be
and then the idea was that the audience would be kind of spawning all around, so they will have, here we go, what a beautiful tree.
Thank you.
So they have to cross the mountain, and then the initial idea was for them to stay kind of a bit uphill, so they have like a view from the top on the entire scene, and I've got, wow, this is gorgeous. This is actually really pretty. This tree is fantastic. So for anyone who is listening to the podcast later on, they've kind of piled up our kind of what's the name of this shape? We're very simple sphere and pills. And it's turning into contemporary art. Tic Tacs, yes.
Quim just revealed a lot more than we wanted to know.
Anyway, let me go back to my attempt to have an explanation of what was happening.
This is a speedball and Robitussin.
So the initial.
That's how you do a 45-minute dance.
There you go. Exactly.
Sorry,
Tic Tac. So yeah, so the idea, the original design was for people to kind of stay on the mountain and then watch down on the lake. But some people straight away went into the middle island, which ended up being behind us, which wasn't great. So. Well, I just turned around. It's fine. and I noticed that everyone was behind me. And this is where live performance is interesting because it's not set in stone, and I'm still a body moving in the space, and I can just turn around and do the choreography the other way around. That's not a problem.
Would that even add like another element? Like you could almost act surprised that they're behind you or anything like that. And it could change the whole attitude of the performance too.
Exactly. There's been one day where I think I've been trying to be like, you're in the right place. You're in the wrong place. This is my island. Go away. It's like kind of pushing them away. So there's a lot of things that can then appear on the spot and be really fun to do with the audience.
Michael, where do you watch the show from?
Yeah.
I'm always
cloud.
He keeps
I'm always an invisible avatar, and I'm either really far away or kind of like in the little backstage area. So at the top of Clem's piece, I always fly below the scene right to where they're spawning in their avatars and their cameras to just kind of see if I can troubleshoot it all or see what's going wrong. And then, yeah, I think for each other one, I'm either kind of far away watching the audience overview, or I am actively doing something backstage where, for the second to last piece, I was manually placing her video camera in the spot during the pre-show, which took an extra little coordination and handoff. But yeah, I'm always an invisible avatar, just kind of looking around, and then also if I'm occasionally will get a audience member who either intentionally or unintentionally is sharing the audio of their physical space, and frantically backstage, like scrolling through the big panel that we have of all the open mic threads and like trying to identify who the person talking. I think the very first show of this, we just had someone, as soon as we spawned into Clem's scene, just say like, "This sucks," before the show had even started. And we've had some run-ins with some people who are trying to disrupt performances in the past, and that's kind of changed the way we've designed things. But yeah, that's one of the things I'm always kind of monitoring as well as watching the actual performance.
That's funny because in our old booth, we'd invite people just to come and join the conversation. We haven't added that here yet because we haven't added the ability to mute people and stuff like that. So we get it. You always get that one person that's just got to try to ruin everything.
Yeah, and people who say that sucks, we don't kick them or mute them. It's really like what we've had to figure out is at what point is it in the performance, and then certainly people who are saying things that are hurtful or harassing individuals. Those are the people that we do immediately kick and kind of have protocols in place for that.
You just lock them in a dark room with that clown avatar, would probably do it.
Yeah.
Well, Brennan and I have been talking about in developing NPC, making a, what does it mean to completely stop the show and have a big going away party for the person who's about to get kicked.
That's awesome.
Just make a copy of all the characters and the attendees and everything. Make an NPC copy of them, like they're just in their own instance now, and everybody just points at them and laughs and makes fun of them.
For the rest of the show.
And you think it's all the real people because it's like everybody was just participating. Everyone's just pointing at you.
Man, that's something that we could actually do very easily with this tool. Like send someone to a new web page or like a special little room for them. That's a good idea. I'll have to cut you a check for that one.
It's the opposite of the hook.
Yeah. Just stick them in a room with a parrot
panel. Yeah.
And I'll play the parrot and I'll just repeat whatever they say until they're annoyed and leave.
Or just like a trap door, and it just sends them down into a fire pit that nothing happens until they leave.
No, wait. I lost it. There was something funny.
Well, damn it.
Sure, there was.
There was
They,
finally going to be comedy on this show.
Shia LaBeouf's art piece that we talked about way back.
Oh,
Where,
you
like,
just
Shia
go and
LaBeouf
yell
was
at
like,
him?
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, but he was like caught like plagiarizing some stuff or whatever. So he just like sat in a room with a paper bag on his head, and then like you could do whatever you want in the room while he was in there or something like that. Just put him in a room with Shia LaBeouf till they leave.
Nobody
I'd
wants
leave.
that.
I'd put the paper bag back down like, oh, sorry about that. No, just kidding. Just kidding, Shia LaBeouf. We know you're listening.
Any final thoughts as we wrap up, y'all?
I really enjoyed it. I'd much like to do it again, see you guys go through whatever you have again. Every piece was very interesting, and I like the ending even. You kind of had like, you pulled out the DVDs and crap. Whoever came up with the case, like the movie names, that was gold. That was awesome.
Oh.
And then you can just let them hang around and like enlarge them and shrink them. You know, you can just kind of goof around. But yeah, I can't wait to join again. Like, it didn't answer your first question before. Like, you know, what do you like about, like, my favorite thing is it's just you don't know what to expect. It's different every time, and it's just like the liveness of it, because like Wookiee said, playing games, it's repetitive. Not VR so much, but like traditional flag gaming, I've said on the podcast many times, like I was like, am I getting old? Like, games aren't as fun. Do the games just suck? Like, what's going on with this? It's my favorite hobby. It's being ruined by something. And then VR came along and blew that out of the water and really got me excited about stuff again. So that's like, we've talked to a lot of different people. Like, you know, we're gamers by nature, I guess I would say. But when we talk to people like that have different experiences, like your guys's, or like whether it's just like anything but gaming, like those have always been the more interesting things, and it's kind of shocked me every time because I'm a gamer. So when we run into this stuff that's different, it's like, wow, you can do this, and people are making it work, and you know, getting all the great stories by just, you know, even the issues you run into is like makes it memorable. Like, it's just, you're kind of in the moment, you remember that stuff more than some other game I played and I got to like level 5 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I remember that stuff way more than anything else. So there's some kind of little magic there, and whether it's just the stories or participation or a mix of both, it's way more enjoyable than a lot of other things that happen. So
And that is the verdict.
that's right.
Need a gavel.
Well, we hope everybody listening checks out OnBoardXR. We do it every 3 months. We do it seasonally. If you know an artist that wants to work in VR, or you want to give them that nudge, they can come join our ragtag team by going to theaterfestival.online or use hashtag OnBoardXR at any of the places, most of the social medias. I don't think we're on Tumblr, but we're everywhere else.
And anyone listening or watching, I'll have links to as many of those as I can fit in there. So just look for that if you're interested.
Clem's 45-minute show.
Yep.
That's right.
Yes, please.
Oh, well, and Clem does Twitch streaming on the weekends where you actually can see some of this mocap stuff. So
Yes,
check out
so
follow the
every
Twitch channel.
Sunday, 5 p.m. GMT. So at the moment, this is a 1 p.m. Eastern time, but from the week after, it's going to go back to noon Eastern time, daylight, and all of that jazz. We are sharing a lot of our experiments at the moment. We're experimenting with mocap with Christian in New York, myself in London. We are playing in Unity, where we're just building different scenes for different interactions and kind of exploring this idea of remote collaboration, remote intimacy, and what it means to be two different bodies in that virtual space. So do join us, and then there's so much more fun things to come. Yeah.
At Unwired Dance on Twitter and Instagram, at Moran Michael on Twitter, I believe is your only social. Is there anything you want to plug, Michael, that's not on board related?
No, Brendan and I are going to meet pretty much right after this to start talking about the next on board. So be on the lookout for the very next season.
And thank you both so much for coming to the show and for having us on the podcast to talk about it.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, fun.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching and listening and joining us. Catch the shows when they're available. We'll be retweeting and sharing when they are. Can't wait.
Huzzah!
Yay!
Yay!